Welcome back to Killer Fun, where we explore the intersection of crime and entertainment every other week. I'm Christy.
And I'm Jackie.
And today, we are welcoming you to Robocktober.
Robocktober!
That's right. First up, we're talking about unknown killer robots.
Ooh.
It's got this very exciting name, and it has a lot of intense music. And it's a bunch of nerds talking about computer stuff.
Yeah. And bless them, they got a little repetitive. Mm-hmm. Like Netflix really tried to up the ante with some things. Uh-huh. And I guess I'm a nerd because I'm like, you don't need to do that. Like the subject matter is fine, but it's almost like they expected everyone else to be bored stiff. So they tried to create a bunch of stuff around it, and I'm like, it's good content, y'all.
They've
Simmer
got
down.
20 really interesting people talking about stuff.
Right.
We cannot show the changing the 1 to the 0.
The 0 to the 1.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I
think at some point I literally yelled at the TV. If you do that one more time.
It was 7 or 8 times that they showed this one little stock photo clip.
Yeah, because it's not the real thing.
No.
Right? But they recreated it.
Right.
And then they zoomed in.
Well, and they zoom in on this computer program that's making the most toxic chemicals known to man. And I really appreciate that they went through this work to make sure that they didn't show anything because all of the toxicity levels were 0.0.
I saw that. I was like, oh.
I'm like, okay, that's good.
It's a good thing.
But it's also silly.
But then they made them demonstrate how they did it.
Yeah, how they typed it in.
And I have opinions. I felt like they really upped the ante with the dramatics by these individuals, particularly acting like they'd never tried it before.
Right.
And I'm like, maybe that's why I don't do that work, because it'd have been the first freaking thing I'd done. You mean this computer model can create all of this good stuff?
Uh-huh. What's the awful thing it can do?
I've got to try the opposite. It's the most natural thing. And none of them thought to do that. I thought they just kind of they simplified a little bit for effect.
That's fair.
And
but these people seemed very earnest.
They did.
And they were not good actors.
No.
So to be fair, acting's not their gig.
No.
That's not what they were there to do.
It's clear.
It's very clear.
It does help the authenticity.
Uh-huh. So they may have been very earnest in their desire to do good in the world. And I really appreciate that.
I just can't believe nobody went, really? Yeah. What if I just
turn
that 0 to a 1? Okay.
That's because you and I...
Because we have this podcast.
That's right.
That's why we do this.
That's right. Exactly. Because we're like... What if we turned it toward toxicity instead of away?
I feel like that's information useful to know.
I mean, and so did they.
Things to avoid.
Yeah.
Things not to do.
We'll get there.
We have to get there because we're going to have to go back and backtrack and explain the whole 0-1 thing.
We're getting there.
So listeners, hang in there.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
Yeah. So it was a little more frightening and doomsday than I thought it might be. But I was also kind of very amped up.
Yeah, I mean, they were dealing with the art of war.
Yeah.
And so I think that lended itself to more of a doomsday fear, right? Because in the ethical conversation, if you're talking about war and military, well, that is the bad result is doomsday, right? So I kind of gave it a little grace for that, just because of the fact that they weren't talking about AI writing your papers. They were talking about weaponized AI.
Right. I kind of felt like it was you've seen AI at work in the world, whether you realize it or not, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But do you know, military, it has been weaponized, basically.
Right, this is happening over here.
Yeah, you should know.
Yeah.
This is happening.
And I guess it is hard because being in the circles, or at least the orbit of those circles, I feel like I'm fairly aware. So I don't think they said anything that was, for me, super mind-blowing. right?
Right.
Just because of the
the association you have with some things.
So but if you didn't, I could imagine this would be very eye-opening.
Well, and I don't think I quite realized how much of it was already integrated into the military in the US.
Yeah.
And the rest of the world, really.
Right.
Like, I kind of assumed we were, the leading edge of this, and maybe not so much.
Maybe not so much. Of course, it is a Netflix documentary.
Right.
So therefore, you take whatever they figured out and told you now, go ahead and multiply that. We might very well be far ahead.
Right.
We just don't
or we
see
might
it in the
be very, very far behind.
But our track record shows,
This is true.
as one individual who was being interviewed, our pattern of failure, I was like, also our pattern of being way ahead. So,
So we're going to cross fingers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked how they included a lot of ethical minds, though.
Right.
And I liked the conversation.
Yes. So they had not really a cast. Normally we talk about the cast.
Right. Normally do.
They had like 20 people who are generally very nerdy, very intellectual, talking about their experience with it. I did notice that there were only 4 female presenting people that they had talking about things.
And that was a journalist and the ethics person.
Yeah.
Generally. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So the journalist was Meredith Broussard, the ethics person, Amelia Jaworski.
Yes.
Then there was Stacy Pettyjohn, a writer, and we'll get into her in just a second. And then Izumi Nakamitsuchi from the UN as the High Representative for Disarmament Affairs.
Yes.
Which tells you really like, okay, this is a military thing. As much as we're like, ooh, Chat GPT.
Right, yeah.
I'm going to go see if I can catch the computer making a mistake.
Right.
There's more to it than that.
Yep, there is.
So I was like, I know that says that there's not a lot of women involved in this particular area. Yeah. And I understand that they're maybe even overrepresenting women in this particular arena because it's a very heavily male-dominated field, but maybe it should not be.
Well, yeah, and I think probably if you looked at AI overall, even when you got down to maybe the engineers and stuff in these very companies, you probably see a little bit more balance. But I think the issue is, though, the individuals they looked at had military careers.
Sure.
And then moved on. So if you look at the jobs that those individuals had, Navy SEAL, weapons systems operator or officer, right? Like pilots, those were not jobs that had a lot of women in them when they were at their peak.
Right.
So if for them to take what they knew and come out of it and take it to the next level in their second career, it just didn't. There's not a lot of women for them to take with them as colleagues, even though women have been pilots for a long time, et cetera. It's just they're not as well represented there as they are today. So I'm hoping that will work itself out a little.
I hope so. But as scary as all this stuff goes, I think it'd be nice to have some more women raising their hand and saying, I see you want to change that 0 to a 1 and push this towards toxicity. Have you thought about really what that means? Because I don't think that these 2 men who did that had.
Well, because bless them. I'm going to have a moment because the thing about that was like the whole idea. Like, we never thought about that. Really? You never ever thought about just doing that? You never thought about what the consequence would be if you did it? That felt like in my this is stereotypical, forgive me. That just felt like such a man move.
I mean, I agree.
I think a woman would have sat there, and I feel like a woman would typically be like, yeah, we've thought about it. We didn't do it because obviously, but for the sake of, exploring it and being able to show the data and have the ethical conversation and then do this presentation about it, we did it. And here's all the steps we took to protect that data, knowing what it would produce based on everything we know about what we do here. So it just felt like, I felt like this documentary made those two men sound like the dumb sitcom dad. Oh. And maybe they're just not that dumb. And I felt like maybe they just made them really look that way. And I'm like, I don't know. They felt like dumb sitcom dads. And I'm like,
fair. They just,
but like you said, they had such a genuine concern that was very evident.
Right. They were very honestly shocked about the results that they got. And I'm like,
how are
really?
you?
Really?
I'm a snorty McSnortiton today. Yeah. I'm going to keep doing it. And I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's fine. All right. So recap. This is going to be super short. AI is more powerful than lay people realize, and everything can be weaponized.
Period.
This is it. That's the whole recap. That's it. So if you want to laugh at weaponization,
come listen to our podcast.
Well, yes. Also, there is a show that was on for like 2 seasons that I was so sad when it got canceled.
What was it?
It's called Better Off Ted. And it's about a huge corporation and the people who work in it.
Okay.
And it is very funny. And I don't even know what kind of corporation to analogize it to. It's called Viridian is the name of the company. But they do like inventions and making the world better. But then they have also these like really ridiculous like little advertisements that are part of the show. It's very, very funny. And they weaponize everything basically. So they have people working in a lab and they're like, we want you to invent this bizarre thing. Like, floating harnesses so children can be weightless.
Okay.
Or like self-replicating potatoes or, I mean, just like weird.
Sounds like an episode of Phineas and Ferb.
Oh my gosh. It's like live action Phineas and Ferb almost. It's very funny, but they weaponize everything.
Everything. Yeah. Well,
yeah. So Unknown is a docuseries on Netflix.
Yes.
There were 4 episodes. Instead of having them all drop at once, like you normally get from most Netflix shows, these ran week to week. So this was the second of them. And they all started in July of 2023. The first one was The Lost Pyramid.
No.
Which is basically a couple of Egyptologists trying to find the next big discovery in the archaeology.
That sounds like something I'd watch, though.
I mean, I probably would, but it kind of is veering a little more towards Ancient Aliens, sort of the History Channel area than. But they also had the Cave of Bones, which is the oldest known graveyard in the world is not human.
Oh, interesting.
And Cosmic Time Machine, which is probably the one that I would like watch with my family because it's behind the scenes launch of NASA's James Webb Space Telescope.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I think that's really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back with Is It True, which I'm going to kind of focus on AI in that section.
Okay.
And then psychology break and real life in just a minute.
So here's how it works. Christy wrecks her search history. Hey, an essay. We promise it's nothing more nefarious than a podcast. To find out what's true, some of the psychological motivations behind the characters' actions, and real-life applications that relate to our topic. I have no idea what Christy decided to look up. Could be the same thing that captured my curiosity or something I never thought of.
Is it true? AI edition.
Ooh.
Okay.
Dum, dum, dum.
So why even bother with AI? What are its advantages and disadvantages? Let's
so
talk
many.
about that.
So many on both sides.
I mean, really, yes. So Simply Learn has an article about this. And so let's define the types of AI.
Yes, please. Because AI is a bit of a misnomer, honestly.
Right.
Right, in some ways.
Right. In some ways.
In the ways that people use it and think of it.
Right. Yes. So there's weak AI, which focuses on a particular task. It doesn't move beyond its limitations. It does one thing that it's programmed to do. ChatGPT. That's this weak AI. As much as it sounds like a person,
Right.
or it can, it's all it's doing is language.
Right.
That's all it really can do.
Yeah.
Then strong AI is what we're working towards, where it can learn and intellectual tasks. Now, strong AI isn't learning a particular task. It's learning any task. So
Right.
it's that we're not quite there yet. So it kind of seems like we're there.
But
This is what we're working on now, is how do we get the machine to learn, and do we get it to learn beyond a particular scope? Does it fly F-16s?
Right.
Okay, that is the only thing that an AI can do. Technically, that's a weak AI.
Yeah.
As powerful as it is, it only does that one thing.
Right.
So, but if you had one that could fly F-16s and write your term paper and guess what word is next and predict the weather,
right. Then we're talking about
then that would be strong AI. And right now, that's what we're working
attempting
towards.
for.
And then super AI
Is Skynet.
yes. It surpasses human intelligence in all ways.
Right.
Maybe we should avoid that one.
I mean, maybe so.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't know.
Because that's where even with strong AI, but that's where you start to get into all of those interesting things about how do you operationalize the term intelligence?
Right.
What does that actually mean? Because at this point we say AI, that's why I say it's a bit of a misnomer. It's not really, it's artificial intelligence if you define intelligence the way we did in the 60s.
Right.
By this particular set of fixed intelligence, or whatever. But if you think about intelligence more, like we do today, like with a trifactor of creativity and practical knowledge, or knowing how to versus knowing facts and things of that sort, really these AIs, they are just highly programmed.
Right. Yes and no. I mean, they can learn. That's the
They
thing.
can, but they're
Some of them
programmed
can
how
learn.
to learn.
Right.
Right. So
Yes.
it's told, accept these stimuli, input that data into this, and make adjustments.
Right.
And that we do.
Right.
That's so yeah, in that way we can call that an intelligence. But at
It's
no
not
point
sentient.
it's not sentient.
Yeah.
Right. It's not.
It's not aware that it is alive.
It can't internalize
or
the
it's
rules.
not alive. It does know where. Yeah, you understand.
Right. It's not.
Yes.
It can only keep the guardrail, toddler style. Like it can keep the rules. But it can't internalize the rules. That would be super AI.
Right. Yes.
That would be okay. At that point, we really have to decide what is intelligence and what is sentience and what is all of that.
Yeah. Assuming that the AI doesn't decide for us.
Of course, yeah. But of course, we're deciding all of that all the time. Like, what do feelings mean? Are
Right.
they just data, or is it something divine?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like shrugging. Oh.
Wow.
All right. Advantages of artificial intelligence.
yes.
It can reduce human error because once you teach it how to do something properly and the right way, it can replicate it repeatedly over and over, even in different scenarios.
Yep.
Yeah. It can reduce the risk to people.
Yes, it
So if you are going to do things like travel into the deep part of the ocean or deep space or defuse a bomb, okay, it would be expensive to have the bomb blow up while the robot who is doing it autonomously explodes it by accident. It sucks, but no human lives were lost.
Right.
There's that. They're 24/7 availability. They don't get tired. They don't need breaks. They don't need,
but
they can continue to work.
If current tech tells us anything, they're going to have to be restarted.
Well, it quit working. It put out weird stuff. Should we reboot it? Yeah, let's do that and see if it still puts out the weird stuff.
Have you unplugged it? And plugged it back in. I don't know. Its face gave me this blue screen. Oh yeah, you're gonna have to unplug it. Count to 10. Press the power button, then plug it back in.
That's right. Unbiased decisions. This one with a big asterisk, though.
Good, yes.
Because humans are driven by emotion. Whether we realize it or not, whether we like it or not, there is a certain emotional component to nearly every decision that we make. So they can make unbiased decisions, assuming that their code is also unbiased.
So a way to say that is they make less noisy decisions. But based on their programming, there will be a bias.
Right.
Because a bias is a tendency.
Right.
So it will have a tendency, but it'll be less noisy, meaning it'll make more congruent decisions based on data, whereas people are driven, like you said, by emotions. And so it puts noise into our decision making.
Sure. And the more people you have contributing to the coding process itself, the more you can mitigate any one person's bias.
The irony being that the way that they make these decisions is by computing all of the what ifs, what would a bunch of people, like creating this army of things and then aggregating that to make the best decision.
Right.
Like it's just doing it on the spot, whereas we'd have to like go talk to everybody.
Right. Exactly.
So it also is a big, big, big advantage to introverts.
Yeah, that's fair. They can perform repetitive jobs.
Oh, yeah.
So things that are menial, boring, it'll free humans up to make the more creative sort of decisions and doing more interesting sorts of things. There's always going to be some sort of task that could be automated, but maybe isn't. There'll be jobs for people probably. So, and if not, then hopefully there will be different jobs that we haven't even thought of yet.
Right.
Faster decision making. They can make real-time insights out of a bunch of data that we might not be able to interpret quickly.
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
And pattern identification goes along with that. So they can take a lot of data and find the patterns really quickly. So, which is good for humans because humans are built to see patterns.
Yeah, we are.
And so that's the kind of, I think, really situation that'd be really good for humanity is, where we like patterns, but we have so much information.
Yeah, we like patterns so much we see them where they don't exist.
Yeah.
We're creative so that we create a pattern. You ever get to connect the dots as a kid and you're like, I'm not doing those numbers. There's other dots here. There are other shapes here. And you create a whole different picture. Right? Like that's what, but humans do this and then they make a shape and decide it's something.
Right.
And it wasn't something, which is probably
like
what my pictures look like. Yes, like constellations.
I'm like, those 3 lines don't look like a bear.
Right? Or like a bear. Yeah. My dot pictures never turned out to be anything.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But I wanted to do something new.
Okay.
But I don't draw. So
literally never connected the dots in any way that wasn't linear.
Oh, really? Never occurred to you to be like, no, I don't want to do that.
Not once.
Oh, yeah. No.
Wow. I was today years old. I was like, somebody didn't follow the connect the dot rules.
No. Why would I do that? That's boring. I can look at the numbers and see what the picture is. So I've already done that in my head. Now what's next? Okay. Right? Like that's
okay.
Right? So I don't know. But I didn't draw anything that mattered.
It didn't make any sense.
It didn't make any sense. And so if I decided it made sense, we would call that now a conspiracy theory.
There you go. All right. Disadvantages of artificial intelligence. It can have a very high cost.
Oh.
So there is a barrier to entry, so it might not be uniformly applied in ways that make equitable sense for society.
So it could basically increase human bias.
Sure.
Yeah. Interesting.
Unemployment, there is an inevitable number of jobs that are going to be displaced by AI. The overwhelming theory by economists based on how these sorts of disruptions have happened in the past is that new jobs that we don't even know about will be created. So when internal combustion engines were finally, invented and deployed widely for use, then we needed mechanics.
Yeah.
That was a job that was created that we couldn't have anticipated before that was a reality for a lot of people. They don't have any ethics. We're going to talk more about this in a little bit.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. They're emotionless. So while that is good,
it's also bad.
It is also bad because the human connections and when we work in teams is really how we come up with our best ideas, usually. And working collaboratively is not a thing that the AI are really capable
Not great
of doing.
At swarming, they talked about a little bit is an entry into that. But like emotions are what allows us to prioritize. So if you've ever heard of Phineas Gage, he was the guy who got the railroad tie through the nail big thing through his brain, and it made him, as the notes went, that he became very stoic and lazy and unmotivated. It's because it hurt his emotions. And so he didn't have that internal emotion drive. So he didn't have as much motivation. He wasn't able to prioritize. And there's a few other stories of history where the lack of emotion that resulted from some incident made the person unable to function. Like they froze in the face of decision.
Okay.
They couldn't decide one thing or another because they didn't care.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting. So when AI started beating humans at games.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting.
That was a big thing. So in 1997, it beat a man at chess. Right. And then in 2016, 19 years later, it took a long time for it to be able to beat a human at Go.
At Go, yeah.
So Scientific American has an article about that and how it changed the way humans played Go. Yeah, which I thought was kind of interesting because isn't this really what AI, its best use is helping us make connections we wouldn't have otherwise made.
Right.
I mean, really, that's the best use. And that's kind of what this did. So in 2016, AlphaGo defeated the world's Go champion Lee Sedol. And Go is much more complex than chess.
Yeah, it looks it.
Yeah.
It looks like Othello on crack.
It really does. That is a perfect description, I think. So it's very popular in Asia. And it's very, very old. When Sedol was defeated at the press conference afterwards, he had said this. Its style was different, and it was such an unusual experience that it took me time to adjust. AlphaGo made me realize I must study Go more.
Oh, I love that. But the look on his face, because they had footage of this. The look on his face made me like a child lost his balloon.
That's fair.
Complete confusion. Like, I didn't know balloons could float away into the sky. It was literally like that look. Yeah. And I just wanted to hug him.
I know. He was actually not the first to lose Go to AlphaGo before they played the world champion at this big press event.
Yeah.
He played the European champion, who's a man, Fondness. He said it made him see it completely differently and completely changed the way he played the game. And his rankings went up in the world, the Go tournament of the world. And once the detailing of how AlphaGo played Go in those games was released to people studied it.
Well, of course.
Right.
I mean, the thing is, it's like these games have perpetual beginner's luck.
Right.
Because the idea about beginner's luck isn't that it's luck. It's that you come in unbiased.
Right.
You come in not being kind of held to certain subcultures and traditions. And so you're more apt to make connections that people who have been playing for a while have kind of like extinguished in their thought processes.
Right.
So it's hard to think outside the box when you're inside the box, right? But beginner's luck, you kind of come in and you kind of think creatively about this. You know, if you were actually a good artist, you know, those dots you connect that aren't numbered might look good. I didn't. But, you know, beginners, like, that's the thing. So, like, in the same way, these programs, like you said before, are unbiased. So they're not beholden to a culture. They're unafraid.
Right.
They're able to make connections that haven't been made before. And are willing to try it because they have all the confidence in the world that they're trying it is nothing but a set of data points that will help them to do better next time.
Right.
And
They don't care if they lose.
No, humans perpetually do not have this confidence.
Right. That's fair. Professor of computer science at the University of Texas at Arlington said that is really the whole point, is that AI can help improve human decision making. So finding new solutions to problems we already have.
Yeah.
And that he likened it to when you have medical imaging, how AI can be really helpful because it can see an anomaly where a human might not and tell the clinician to look more closely at this area. So now the clinician's going to look at the entire film, but the AI is going to say, did you pay attention to these particular spots? Because they look unusual to me based on all of the data that I've seen. Maybe helping people make better use.
Yeah.
All right. So much of AI is predictive.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So this can be an issue, actually. So it's a conundrum because when you have predictive AI models, what they're doing is looking at a data set that is based on history.
Right.
This is what has happened in the past in a variety of scenarios. Here in this scenario that we have right now, what do I think is going to happen next based on what's happened in the past? But there's a lot of change that has happened in a lot of different ways that can make that approach not as effective as maybe it once was.
Because everything's changing so exponentially.
Partly, and also because there are confounds that have happened in the past that we can't predict, that we couldn't predict then, but also we probably still couldn't predict based on...
We're telling it there's a correlation or some kind of causal effect, but there's actually a confound.
Most of them are looking to drop out outliers.
Oh, and that's terrible.
I mean...
Yeah.
So like the financial markets. So if you look at the global financial crisis of 2008, that was a disruptive event that we couldn't predict. I mean, we could have predicted if we'd had all the information, but so few people had enough of that picture to be able to predict it because it was being
I wonder
hidden.
though if AI could have, if it was actually up to speed.
If it had all the information, but that's the thing.
But it had all the information. All we needed to know, in hindsight, obviously.
Right.
So I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit. I'm thinking through it, processing, because I'm wondering, like, okay, all right, obviously I've seen the movie, you know.
Yeah, The Big Short.
And the idea, and that was inspired by an individual who had been raising the flag and raising the alarms.
Sure.
And it's because he happened to zero in on a certain amount of risk that was happening that was kind of extraordinary and identified the conflict of interest that would have then said, hey, that seems risky. But, and that's how I go. Super simplification and maybe not even correct. Anyways, my point being that like the AI now could have, in hindsight, looked at the level of risk that banks were taking
and said,
would have said that level of risk exceeds our norm. Oh, well, this is our norm now. And the AI could have said, okay, based on a changing norm of risk, then conflict of interest, right? It's like if it was trained the same way it is now, it might have been able to spit out.
That's fair.
Because the truth is, everyone in the know knew it was a problem because they had to change the rules to make it happen.
That's fair.
Those loans would have never been given out until the banks were like, make it happen. And then people all over the place was like, above my pay grade.
Yeah.
Okay, then.
Okay.
Here, an interest-only double mortgage. Good for you. And good luck. Right? A lot of people knew.
Climate change is another thing that makes predictive AI less accurate than it might be.
Okay.
Now, I realized this. I'm like, oh, wait, you know what? They talk about the models all the time.
Yeah.
When you're watching the weather, the local weather, they're like, this model says this model says this. We're going to kind of split the difference in what we think is going to happen. It's all AI. It's all algorithms that are looking at past data but when you have things like climate change and we are having, increasingly intense and catastrophic natural disasters that are happening that are a result of climate change, but they're less predictable than they once were.
We don't have the data.
Right.
Like those models that they're using are built on statistics. Right. We used to do that by hand. Then we built computer programs. And then we built computer programs that could run way more than we could even think to run.
Right.
Based on the parameters.
Right.
Then we get these models, right? Like the hurricane where it's like the spaghetti, right?
Yes.
The spaghetti models, right? And but for climate change, we can't really necessarily, we could say, hey, what if this?
Right.
But because physics and because, science.
Right.
We don't really know how those two things will interact because we don't always know all the factors.
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that being a problem.
Yep. Groundbreaking technologies can also make some of those historical data inaccurate.
Yeah.
So AI itself could change the way all kinds of different things would adjust because those are factors we can't account for.
Yeah.
And that we don't have a historical record of, so there's nothing to draw from.
Makes sense.
And then you have political events, social movements, all of these things can affect the way a variety of different kinds of AI are able to make calculations. And they're not able really to predict those because if a social movement or a political instability hasn't happened before,
Right.
they don't know to look for it.
Yeah. I mean, it's funnier in my head. Hold on. I'm thinking about trends, like toy companies.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because I've already watched Megan.
Yes.
We'll explain that later. I've already watched Megan. Y'all, I just messed up this week. I watched Megan first and then
That's
the
all right.
second. But it's fine. I loved Megan. The idea of the toy company kind of came to my head. The idea that you can only vaguely predict what children are going to fall in love with.
This is true.
I'm like, did somebody thought Furbies were going to be a thing?
Oh, and they were a thing for a hot minute. One Christmas.
And I think that, that's all it needed.
Yeah.
But that person had to convince people that was true. Whereas a lot of people were like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I don't think AI can predict children.
Yeah. This is true. Here is the dumbest, creepiest robot you've ever seen.
Ever. Right? Can it predict cult favorites? No. Can it predict that humans actually love things that are awful? No. Right? You know what I'm saying? Can it? But the more we do that...
I watched The Meg 2.
Oh, no.
It was awful, but in the most glorious way.
No.
I was working
Please
on...
don't let this be a cult favorite.
It was bad, but it was high budget bad in a very entertaining way. And I was working on a crochet project.
Right, so you're just
this is fine.
Oh my God.
So it's this very unpredictability that makes AI seem smart to us.
That makes sense.
So, Forbes article. When we see something as very comprehensible, we find it unintelligent. So if you're talking to a chatbot and it keeps repeating the same things over and over, it's got a script. It said, look for these words and reply with this when you see these words.
Right.
Right. And that's fine for a lot of But a lot, like if you need technical support or whatever for something relatively simple, you just don't know how to do it yet.
Yeah.
You
The
know,
novel seems intelligent.
right. Yeah. But it's, yes. So when we don't understand why it's giving us the response, that's what makes it seems intelligent.
Which is exactly what a lot of narcissists and psychopaths use to make them seem charming.
Yes. Excellent point.
So if I was a conspiracy theorist, I might say AI
is narcissistic. Oh, absolutely. It's narcissistic. It is absolutely narcissistic.
But benignly.
But yeah, because it doesn't really care. All it does is solve its objective.
Yeah, that's
achieve the goal.
That's it.
I don't care how you feel about it.
No, it doesn't care how it feels about it because he doesn't feel.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And honestly, the reasons why we think we should fear AI are actually the reasons we shouldn't fear AI.
Okay.
So Fast Company, we should be afraid of AI, but not because of the reasons we can imagine.
Okay.
Okay. So Jesus Diaz wrote an article about it, and he said, you can imagine this chain of events where AI would become a threat to humanity, and actually that you can imagine that series of events allows us to compensate for them. Just that we can imagine it means that we can compensate for those things. Okay. Will we?
A different question.
I hope so, but we can. So what we should really be afraid of is the unimaginable scenario.
Right.
That because we can't prevent something we can't foresee.
Right.
All of the sources that we use to inform our discussion here on Killer Fun Podcast can be found on our social media. Join us on Facebook at Killer Fun Podcast, exploring the intersection of crime and entertainment. You can find us on Twitter at Killer Fun Pod, or you can send us an email at killerfunpodcast@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to share a link to whatever information you're looking for. We love to hear from you. You might learn a little something too. Psychology break.
Ooh, like we haven't been there already.
I mean, for real. But this kind of led me down a little different path. So first we're going to talk about what Paul Scher said, that when he was in the Middle East, that there was a child that was spying on them to give their movements and location to their adversaries.
I'm so glad you brought this up.
Yeah. So he said it never occurred to them to shoot her because she was a child. And he said, now, if we just gave AI the law, by law, it could have shot that child.
And that's where I fact checked them.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm going to put a pause right here.
Okay.
Fact checked. That child is a non-enemy combatant.
Okay.
Because they're a child.
Okay.
The same way that children do not have consent to do things.
Right.
That child was compelled. They are a victim of the enemy combatant.
Right.
And if you look at law, I had to look it up.
Okay.
Because I was like, no. International Committee of the Red Cross confirms that generally the age of consent towards hostile violence and, things of these, all kinds of methods of hostility is about 15-ish or more.
Okay.
So no, the child would never have been shot.
Depends on how old she is.
It does depend on how old, but in the scenario they gave, they talked about a younger child.
Yeah, she seemed like
a 10.
Yeah, 9, 10.
No.
Yeah.
The child would not be shot.
Okay.
Give them the law, the child still would not be shot.
Okay.
Second of all, even within the law, that age of consent is still a very gray area. You still encode that gray area, still wouldn't shoot the kid because the law it goes to explain. And I say law, there's international law and then there's standards, right?
Right.
By the standards, that child is considered, however, a non-voluntary
hostile
combatant. So the likelihood of that child being, forced to their family
Well,
being
or-
threatened.
right.
It's not a good situation. So even downloading just basic law and written standards, the freaking drone would still not shoot the kid. And I
Okay.
felt like a little angry that the Netflix documentary
Didn't
went
catch
for
that.
the fear.
Okay.
Went for the fear there a little bit, because I don't think that was uncalled for. And
Okay.
I think it does a disservice to the kids that a lot of people have worked hard to protect.
Right. Okay. That's super fair.
Ooh, that was my
Yeah.
soapbox. I'm so
Yes.
glad you brought that
Oh,
up.
good. Okay. But it's really a distinction between legal and ethical.
Right, because if there was such an issue, of what if it's an adult who literally has had their consent taken away?
Right.
Then the drone would have no idea.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So
and
the
that's
thing
certainly a
applies.
situation
Yeah.
that could happen.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Legal, according to the Municipal Research and Services Center, is basically the lowest common denominator of acceptable behavior in a society.
Right.
So we've legislated those sorts of things that this is the minimum you have to do.
Right.
Most people also have a personal or societally imposed code of ethics where you help people. The law doesn't say you have to help your neighbor, but personally, ethically, not in all cases. There are cases where, legally you do have to help somebody, but oftentimes, there's a voluntary component to that. So if you see a 10-year-old who looks lost,
Help them out?
You don't have to. By
You don't
law,
have
you don't
to.
have to. Even if that kid looks lost or sad, I mean, if it were, a toddler, that might be a different story if you drive
Maybe.
by, but maybe not. It's hard to tell.
The irony being that oftentimes law will legislate against these types of behaviors.
Right.
Feed a homeless person? No.
Yeah.
Against the law
Right.
in certain
So
cities.
awful. So awful. But I just thought that was interesting to kind of frame that as, ethically, he was not going to shoot this person.
Right.
Well,
and it brings up the difference. Like, okay, say this child who is a victim has had a gun placed in her hand, and now the threat isn't spy, it's literally shoot. And a human is standing there.
Right.
Okay, the human has a right to protect themselves as well. And that gets sticky. The drone doesn't care about life or death, so why
Right.
would it shoot the kid?
Right.
It
It shouldn't.
doesn't have its life at danger. So at no point should the drone shoot a kid because their life isn't in danger. And so I feel like this is a matter of programming. It goes back to that. How well are we programming these things to assess the situation and adhere to law? Actually,
Right.
The law says that child is a child and cannot consent.
Okay, but how does it know it's a child? I mean, you can have a 10-year-old who's 5 feet tall. You can have a 30-year-old who's 5 feet tall. It can be difficult to determine that sort of thing. So if you're having these weapons autonomously,
You would have to give it ranges, parameters of it would do an instant age of the
Right.
face. And then you'd have to give it some parameters.
Right.
Right. In this case, the scenario they talked about, the child had no weaponry. The child was simply spying.
Right.
The drone would have never hardly picked up on that. It was humans that went back and saw
Sure.
saw the connection.
Sure.
That's it.
Yeah.
Humans. So humans actually made that pattern based on this experience. The drone didn't make that.
Right.
Now, if the drone was programmed to make the connection and say this behavior is similar to that of other child spies, its primary goal is to protect the children. Mm-hmm. It may actually, if you said, drone, here's all of these things you do, and you protect women in those regions, that would be women and children, but non-enemy combatants, and they saw a child acting as a combatant, it should then, by all means, identify this child is now at risk.
right.
And change course to follow it
Yeah.
and get whoever's behind it, right? Like, that's how you kind of hope it would go.
Even then, Like, you don't know what that situation is.
You don't know.
It's so complex.
That's why I do like how at the end of the episode they talk about the ethics about how, first of all, the military code right now says no human life will be taken without a human interaction. Right. So first of all, they're not doing that right now anyway.
Right.
Second of all, even as autonomous as they can get, we have a lot of people who are speaking into good spaces about the fact that there is parameters about that. If it may not be a matter of giving it parameters, it may be a matter of saying, here's the tight parameters in which you can, not the flexible parameters in which you can.
Right.
Right.
Yes. All right. So this isn't exactly related.
Okay.
But it made me think of something. So they were talking about, robots autonomously killing people. And it made me think of murder for hire.
Okay.
Because you want someone, either specifically or who is part of a particular group, dead, but you don't want to kill them.
Okay. Yeah. See, this is one of those things the way you could trace.
This is the autonomous thing.
Yeah.
Is they don't want to kill them, but they want them dead all the same.
Right. All the same.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I followed that train of thought just fine.
So, the Atlantic. People who pay people to kill people.
Of course, the Atlantic.
Criminologists have a name for somebody who hires a hitman, and that's called an instigator.
Oh, I thought it was coward. Sorry.
Potato.
Potato. Yeah.
There was a study done that people who hire hitmen are pretty evenly split between men and women, which is interesting because most murders are committed by men.
By men. Yeah.
Right. David M. Buss, who's an evolutionary psychologist, wrote The Murder Next Door, Why the Mind is Designed to Kill, found that 91% of men and 84% of women have had at least one vivid fantasy about killing somebody. We want it equally.
Like instigate, not in self-defense.
No, just like, or maybe in self-defense.
Well,
but
no, because in that case, like men is... You know why I'm asking this, because women are the victims usually.
Right.
So are we killing people in self-defense and the men are actually doing the killing? Or is it equally like homicidal?
It doesn't say this particular article. Okay. I don't know.
All
so,
right. Well, I'm going to assume the best.
Yeah, we're going to assume that, you have a vivid fantasy about I'm being attacked.
Oh, okay.
And
that's self-defense. Okay.
Sure, that's but almost everybody plays through that scenario.
Oh, yeah.
Preparing themselves, if you will.
Yeah, all women.
Yeah.
Yes, all women do this. Do all men? I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah. So it's pretty evenly split. But what about the psychology of the people who hire a hitman?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
This is fun. You're going to like this.
We're such a weird group of people.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
That's all right. So people who hire hitmen are typically drug addicted or greedy or desperate, maybe even psychopathic. They're typically not insane.
Well, yeah, because it takes a lot of very, very logical thought.
Because they've realized that if they kill the person, there's a very good chance they're going to go to jail.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this that they're thinking through. They probably haven't been told by some divine being that somebody else needs to die, because typically when somebody has that sort of delusion, they are the only person who can carry it out and have it be ethical in any way.
Right.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
So it's pretty rare, and it's even more rare that it actually is successful, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah. So we don't have a lot of research in the U.S., but the Australian Institute of Criminality estimated that 2 to 4% of murders in Australia are murder for hire,
Ooh,
which is more than I thought.
Like a lot.
It's more than I thought, but
because I feel like these studies are talking about person to person,
right?
Not the mob,
right? Yes.
Okay, just making sure, because if you were to count that, it would blow the whole thing out. Yeah. Okay.
But Australia has done a lot more research than we have, and they said even when these plots. Now they're counting attempted murders as well as actual murders.
Okay.
Most people don't get away with it.
Yeah.
And let's talk about why, because this is fun. Few of the quote unquote murder masterminds have a criminal background. So they don't know where to find an actual hitman.
I heard criminal background in a totally different light. Like, do you have a background in engineering? I finally heard it as, do you have a background in criminal activity?
Okay.
That's how I heard it for the first time.
Are you a professional
ever.
criminal, or are you, maintaining your amateur status to compete in the Olympics?
I get it. Yes, I told it like a criminal background. We always think about that as like a criminal background, right? They have a pattern of doing this horrible thing. And for the first time, I heard it as a professional distinction or lack thereof.
There we go. I told you were going to like this.
I do.
When you don't have a network of people, what do?
Google it.
Or you ask your neighbor, or you ask your barber. You ask people.
And then those people get interviewed.
And then those people go to the police because most people are not down with this. You ask your butcher because you think this guy deals with knives all the time.
Oh my
He
God.
must know a murderer. He's like, I'm not going to call the police because this fool wants to kill somebody and they only got $2,000 to do it.
It's so funny. Wow.
All right.
Okay.
They also don't get away with it because this criminal mastermind has already told anybody who will listen that he hates this person and wants them dead.
Right, which is why they think they need somebody else to do it.
Right. Exactly. They're immediately a suspect.
Because they have complained about this person, and that literally is the thing that makes them think, well, I can't do it. Everybody will think it's me.
Exactly. We still think it's you. And these criminal masterminds seem to think that if they are not the one who pulls the trigger, they are not culpable.
Oh, God. Bless them.
No, your butt's going to jail.
You're going to jail.
You're not going to jail. You're going to prison.
Prison. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I can't say that on this show. Office Space has a quote for that.
I don't remember.
Well, you go look it up.
Okay.
Y'all drop it in the comments. Okay.
Real life.
Ooh.
Okay. So, was that a video game controller?
I mean, it straight up looked like an old Xbox controller.
That's exactly what it is.
It was. What a cute little doggy animatronic thing. He was so cute.
Yes. Oh, yes. But I think that that was controlling a drone. This one, the Xbox controller was controlling a drone.
Controlling the drone?
It was
Okay,
controlling
okay.
a drone. But it's literally a knockoff Xbox controller that, at least as of a few days ago, you could get on Amazon for $23. Yeah. Incidentally, this is very similar to what they were using to control the Titan submarine that was going down to look at the...
I'm so glad you said this
Titanic.
because that's what I thought. I was like, I've seen this recently in the news. Why have I seen this recently? That's why. That's the thing.
Yes, because they were using a knockoff Xbox controller to control
this
it.
thing. Yeah.
That's not why it imploded.
No, not any at all. The controller was fine.
The controller really was fine.
Testament.
But it was the fiberglass that was a problem.
Yeah.
But
It's so interesting.
That's not related to this.
No,
it was
it's
just,
not.
I was like, that's funny.
No, okay. It was controlling the drone.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was.
The dogs are
the dogs are
autonomously
different.
talking.
If you don't know
walking.
what we're talking about, there's adorable little robot dogs.
Oh, yeah, they're so
and
cute.
they're so cute.
They are cute.
I don't know why, but they're so cute. They trip all
I think,
over
they
themselves.
trip and they fall and then they do the
Little
hopping.
hopping.
It was adorable. If you've ever seen one of those, like, whatever dynamics things that they occasionally in Boston Dynamics.
Oh yeah,
that's what it is. They have it on 60 Minutes, like every 6 months or something. It's basically those robots,
It's
maybe
so
a
cute.
little smaller than those,
Yeah.
but like my parents
Super
will
cute.
always record the end
Aw.
of the 60 Minutes and
About them.
and about that and show it to me like I haven't seen it a dozen times before on 60 Minutes at their house.
Uh-huh.
But it's like new every time for them. It's cute. It's when it comes to that kind of stuff, my parents are like a goldfish in a bowl. So Strategic Operations Incorporated in Unknown Killer Robots. It was a very realistic looking training and so realistic that they've trademarked the term hyper realistic.
Ooh.
From their website. I went and looked up to see what they said. It definitely was a former Hollywood set. And what they are doing is trying to be able to train large numbers of primarily military units.
Okay. Yeah.
In hyper realistic situations. They're duplicatable, they're controllable, but they feel very, very, very much like what they would encounter in a actual field deployment. The reason why they do this is interesting. Defense Science Board did a study and found that 50% of all casualties of war happened in the first 5 or 6 significant exposures to combat.
Oh, wow.
So the first few times that you enter into combat are absolutely the most dangerous because
Right.
it's new.
It's new.
It's like anything. You haven't done it before. It's new.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if you can practice a little in a situation that feels real,
yeah.
then it drops to just 6%.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty amazing.
It's a huge, huge drop. And they found when they did analysis of their salivary glands, they can read a lot of hormone levels.
Right.
And so after they had done a number of trainings, they had a sort of inoculation effect to the stress of combat. So
good.
they were a much better able to deal with it. So using this kind of simulation really, really lessens the likelihood that people will die.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
They also mentioned the fatal funnel.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, according to modern survival, what that is it's a choke point. It's stairwells, it's hallways, it's doorways, places where you're likely
You
to
don't know what's on the other side.
You don't know what's on the other side. If you're going to find yourself in a combat situation, it's close combat, which is extremely dangerous. Understanding where those are. So with the drone going in and mapping several layers of the building, it's going to give them a more complete picture.
Right.
I thought this was interesting that you think about it from somebody entering. This is somebody entering is using the fatal funnel, right?
Yeah.
They're entering into the fatal funnel. It's dangerous for them. If you're in a place where you might have a home invasion or something, it's good as a possible victim to understand where the fatal funnels might be in your own home.
Right.
So you don't necessarily have to have a gun, but the element of surprise, even with like something like a baseball bat, can really, if you can't get out of the residence safely,
know where your element of surprise is.
Know where your fatal funnel is so that you can take advantage of it in order to be able to escape.
Yep.
Which I thought that was interesting.
It is important. I think that's where, like, confession time, I've been alone a lot.
Yeah.
I thought about this. I know where everything is in my house. Like, I know where all my weapons are. I have certain decor placed strategically for my advantage. If I hit you with an elephant mirror that looks like I bought it at World Market, I did. And it will kill you.
Yes.
But I know where it is. You know what I mean? Like those things you think about. You have to think. I think you do think about them when you're alone. But alone with kids, where you're like, I have like lives to protect. I don't know.
They mentioned Tay the Twitter bot.
Okay,
which I had completely forgotten about. And I was like, what was up with Tay the Twitter bot?
Yeah, Tay the Twitter bot.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Okay.
So Tay was using machine learning, natural language processing, and social networks all at one time. So they launched her on March 23rd, 2016.
Oh.
And she had pretty normal, benign, everyday conversations early in the day when they launched her.
Right.
And then a whole bunch of trolls came in and started talking to her in abrasive ways that were anti-Semitic, misogynistic, very, very racist. And what they'd done is have Tay learn from the tweets she was interacting with.
Oh, no. So this just taught her to be that way.
So the more abrasive...
She can't be insulted.
Right. Well, she learned that this is the way you reply to things on Twitter.
Okay.
It was Twitter then. It'll be Twitter to me forever in my heart for as long as it exists. So she learned very, very rapidly to say horrible, horrible things. They took her down after 16 hours.
Oh my God. That's all?
She was untenable.
In the 16 hours? She didn't last a day?
No, not even a day.
That's a Twitter problem. I mean, in 16 hours, people, trolls.
Yeah. It was just people like messing with her. Can we break it?
Wow.
All they had to do was tell her, you learn how to reply to people using this particular set of accounts, not every account you interact with.
But they told people that she was an AI.
Yeah.
So they didn't covertly launch her.
No.
So here's where the trolls came in.
Right.
They were trying to break her.
Right. Exactly.
I feel better.
Did.
I feel better about this.
Oh, okay.
All this, I thought for a second we were talking about they kind of covertly launched her.
No.
And that within 16 hours, the world had defiled her in such terrible ways. No, I feel much better about this now.
No.
Okay. All right.
No.
Well, that's still terrible, but I feel better.
Yeah. It was people trying to break her.
Okay.
And they did. And they did it really fast.
All right. Okay.
And then they also talked about the Amazon face recognition.
Yeah.
Which, oh my gosh, do you know what it's named?
No.
Recognition, but the C is a K.
Oh.
That's horrible because it seems either racist or Russian.
I mean,
it's
bad.
Not
good.
Can we give it a cutesy name?
Yeah.
Can we call it, Alexa Face?
I mean, thank you.
I mean, can we not call it recognition?
Right?
No,
Ooh.
it's ugly.
Ugh.
But the ACLU, because this is available to anybody who's willing to pay Amazon for it.
Eek.
And oh, by the way, they gave it all of the publicly available photos of members of Congress from the United States.
Yeah.
And matched it against databases that are publicly available of mugshots. And that's where it came up with the 28. And would you like to know how much that cost the ACLU?
Oh.
$12.33.
Wow. And they were false matches.
28 of them. And they were disproportionately people of color. 40% of the false matches were people of color, when at that time only 20% of people in Congress were people of color.
Wow. Yeah, it's not good.
It's ugly.
Ugh.
Bad.
That's bad. That's bad.
That was in 2018, so it was a while ago. Hopefully it's gotten better.
I'm sure it has.
Is it enough better?
I don't know.
Well, I don't know either. All right, so I was wondering what the Spies laboratory was, because they asked, Sean Akins of the Collaborative Pharmacology,
right,
to come and speak.
Yes,
and,
yeah. The Spies laboratory. This is where they ended up changing the 0 to a 1. Thing.
They pushed it towards toxicity to develop molecules instead of away from it. And so I was like, why would a laboratory care about this? I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
But what is their objective? So I just want to know what their objective was. And it's the Swiss Institute for the Protection of the Population Against Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Threats and Dangers. Basically, they're science people trying to save the world.
And see, this is why everybody else understood that the pharmaceutical company was capable of.
It's like they were just focused on doing good.
Oh, bless them. I mean, I just felt like this was a Netflix thing. But yeah.
Sure.
Not that it wasn't true that they were concerned about doing good, didn't want to do bad, and did the experiment on behalf of this because they understood the premise.
Right.
That this could be done. But Netflix, this documentary made it seem like they had never even thought about that before. Yeah.
We're both men.
I mean, but like dumb sitcom men. I mean, it was bad. Okay.
Right. So I don't love pharmaceutical companies. I think they tend to be, many of them start out with altruistic intentions, and then money corrupts. But as far as pharmaceutical companies go, Collaboration Pharmaceuticals seems to be pretty decent because their primary focus is helping people with rare disorders that aren't getting any attention.
Yeah, aren't getting the attention.
Right. About 30 million Americans suffer from rare diseases. Half of them are children. 30% won't live to be 5 years old. Very often, the way that they determine what treatments to seek out is that a parent of a very ill child contacts them because they are out of options. And so they do help a lot of people that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
that's nice.
Yeah. So they're good, but they did, run into this dual use conundrum here.
Right.
So a dual use problem, they talked about it. They're like, fire is dual use.
Everything is dual use.
Yeah, I mean, really everything is
the
really
idea
dual
is
use.
kind of universal.
It is, but when it comes to science, it's a little more complicated because fire, it happens naturally. Human brains do awful things kind of naturally. These are the examples that they gave in the show. So, but when it comes to scientific use, they have to understand if something can be used in a morally corrupt way, an undesirable way, and if the risks of pursuing that avenue of scientific research is more dangerous than it is helpful.
Yeah.
So that's the dual use problem that they're talking about in the scientific. But then you run into the idea that if you don't do it, your adversaries will.
Yeah, which is the whole point of staying ahead of it. Right. Yeah.
All right. You mentioned swarm behavior.
I did.
And I thought that was interesting. Now, they said that animals, when it's seen in nature, they follow a few simple rules. But they didn't say what those rules were for swarming. And I was like, what are those rules?
And simple being...
Oh, they're simple.
They're simple, but they're...
No, they're very simple.
Yeah.
So they have done some distillation of how things move in nature when they're swarming.
Right.
So it may be a part of a migration. It may be in response to some stimuli. It might just be that there's a bunch of them in one spot.
Right.
But here are the rules that they follow.
Okay.
They move in the same direction as their neighbor. They remain close to their neighbor, and they avoid collisions.
Simple. Very, very complex
simple
to execute.
Right.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Is that they're simple rules, but they're complex to execute.
Right.
Because the idea that there's no one leader saying, okay, move in the direction of your person, but that means that multiple people are making or entities are making decisions about what direction that is.
Right.
And that everybody's following suit and that is somehow democratized.
Right.
We don't work that way that well.
No, and we don't really understand how it works very well. And yet we're able to program the AI to basically do this. And it ends up making the group greater than the sum of its parts.
Right. But that's dual use because the idea that the group may go down a wrong path.
Right.
Right. Like they may move around, but to no benefit of themselves.
Right.
Right. Or they may make progress towards some sort of goal.
Right.
But what is the goal?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe they have a common goal like ants.
Right.
You know, moving
That's
food.
excellent.
Yeah. But they may have a common goal, but also if one falls away, one is injured, is a free thinker. A free thinking ant goes off on its own. It's not going to live very long, and it's going to be It's not taking everybody with it.
Right. And the dual use of that is that it says that if you're neurodivergent, you don't matter.
Right.
If you are outside of the box, you are not worthy.
Right.
And the ethics come into play to say, but you know what? That's why you're just a school of fish. And you don't run the world.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
But it makes sense for like AI drones.
But it makes
if
sense
one
for
gets shot down.
Then it's like Christmas tree lights. Yes, please, by all means. Like all of you keep running with the one bulb out. My God.
Yeah.
But like as far as species are concerned, like it's 3 simple rules, but they are dual use in of themselves because it's groupthink. And we understand that from a biological perspective for humans, this is actually detrimental.
Sure. Robot dogs are indeed at Tyndall Air Force Base.
So cute.
They are cute. They patrol the less populated, more remote areas of the base. They can operate in conditions of negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit to 131 degrees Fahrenheit. They're more likely to end up on the higher end of that spectrum since Tyndall Air Force Base is in Florida. I don't know, there's not a lot of, negative 40 degree days there.
Not usually.
And Tyndall is the perfect place for them to be because it is the installation of the future.
Cute.
So let's talk about some good stuff about AI.
Yeah, please.
So I mentioned this a little before, but it's worth noting again. The information overload is really where AI can come in and be of great benefit. Not only can it make connections that we might miss, but it can help us distill a lot of information into patterns that we can recognize or helpful scenarios that might make business decisions or other kinds of decisions much easier and better for humanity. I was watching Stephen Colbert. It just came back because of the writer's strike. And his first guest back was
Neil
deGrasse Tyson. Thank you. Yes. And he is an astrophysicist. And he said he loves AI because it helps him understand a ton of information. It'd be information he could just swim in for days and couldn't make sense of it. And AI helps him distill this information in ways that's actually helpful.
Super cool, right?
I thought that was awesome.
That's so cool.
Here are some kind of frivolous, but also kind of awesome things that AI computers have done, according to The Observer. They can dominate old arcade games.
Oh, man, I bet so.
So they said at first they're pretty bad at doing it. So they train for about an hour. They can play, a couple hundred games in an hour, and they get better.
Yeah.
They're still not great, but they're better. In another hour or so, they'd never lose. And then with even more training, they find ways to win faster and with less risk.
I mean, my whole childhood playing Q*bert and Kid Icarus. I'm just going to take them 2 hours.
Yeah, Pong.
That's still fun, though.
It is still fun. They can learn to play poker and even bluff. They don't win, but they can play. So there was an AI named Claudio who learned how to play poker and bluff and didn't beat the professionals, but the professionals said he played very well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That.
They've changed how we find music.
Oh.
Spotify, Apple Music.
True.
All of those things. They're using AI to serve us new music that it thinks based on what we've listened to, we will probably like.
Which is probably why it doesn't work for me. It doesn't
right,
get
because
people
you're
like me.
pretty eclectic.
Yeah.
And at Tufts University, AI was able to solve a problem that had confounded scientists for 120 years.
What's that?
There is a little worm called a planarian.
Okay.
And when you cut it, it regenerates.
It comes back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how it did that. So they fed it all of the research. And in 3 days, it figured out that the process of regeneration included 3 known molecules and 2 proteins that they didn't know the planarian had.
What? Oh, that's cool.
That is cool.
That is cool.
So AI, not all bad.
Not all bad.
Might kill us, but not all bad.
But maybe we can regenerate. I'm just kidding.
Maybe we deserve it.
No, maybe that too.
All right. So next time we are going to talk about a movie you have already watched. I have not. And you have allayed some of my fears because I don't typically like super scary movies. And you said it's not super scary.
It's not a slasher horror
movie. So Robocktober continues with Megan. I believe it is on Amazon Prime. At the moment. And sometimes it's styled MEG3N.
Yeah.
Because, she's a robot.
Yes.
So, yeah. Rogue Companion.
Yeah. It's an acronym.
Yeah.
Megan for short.
Okay. Fun.
Situation. Yeah.
Fun. Excellent. All right. Thank you so much for listening. We know you make a choice when you listen to us. Tell a friend because it is more fun when you can listen with a friend. And until next time, be safe, be kind, and wash your hands.
Bum, bum, bum. Da, 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 da.